I'm happy. 2019 basically picked up where 2018 left off in terms of happiness for me. Homestead was a great race to end out the 2018 season. Well, this year's Daytona 500 was just as good to start the season. The 2019 Daytona 500 came and went. I'm happy with the race. I'm happy with everything that played out during the race. And I'm even more happy that social media and everyone who assumed that the race was going to be boring and whatnot, was just going to be single file the whole way through, was proved wrong, and that there was very rare moments of single file during the race. A great Daytona 500, but let's just recap Speedweeks as a whole very quickly. The last thing I recapped was 500 qualifying and the Clash, and so the duels came and went, nothing really special there. I mean, I expected the duels not to be great because, once again, that's your Daytona 500 car. You want to get through that so that you can have it for the practice session, not have to work overtime to get that other car back in place. So the best part of the duel was Duel 2 when Logano made a last lap pass on Clint Bowyer. That's really all that happened during those. The truck race, there was good racing, but they just wrecked a lot, and that's not really my type of thing. Like, I understand it's pack racing, it's restricted plate racing. There's going to be crashes. There's going to be at least a big one during the race, and I expect a big one. But when there's wreck after wreck after wreck after wreck, that gets a little ridiculous, especially like, the one with Bobby Gearhart, and I think it was Austin Wayne Self, who like just spun themselves at the back of the pack for no reason. I mean, at some point you just got to chill out and say, okay, because 55 of 111 laps were run under the yellow flag that race. That's half the race was run under the yellow flag in the truck series. That is ridiculous, to say the least. Very, very just bad. I mean, that was bad. And then the Xfinity race was another extreme. So we went from the extreme of a wreck fest to the extreme of we'll just go single file. The Xfinity guys, I thought they were going to play it smart in stage one and just go single file and just ride it out. They made last lap pass, the two colleague racing cars did. And I thought they were just going to play it safe. Stage 2 saw some better racing. They were side by side, double file. They weren't going 3 wide, but that's, expected. You don't have to go 3 wide that early in the race, just go double file. Then they got back into a single file train, and then stage 3, they just stayed single file. And honestly, I don't care if stage 1 and stage 2 is single file. It just makes sense at a plate track like that because, it's kind of just, it's the smart thing to do. Save your car and wait for the last stage. But when you're single file at the end of stage 3, there's no need to be single file end of stage 3. It's like the drivers were content just riding where they were and not wanting to gain positions. And it all turned out that Michael Annett won the race. Michael Annett won a race for Junior Motorsports finally. All those years where he's been in the 5 car and has done nothing, he switches over, or I think it's the same team, but he just gets the number 1 car now, and he ends up P1 at Daytona with his teammate Justin Allgaier behind him in second. So Michael Annett has won his first race in the Xfinity Series here at Daytona. He's finally a winner. No one can say he's never won in Junior Motorsports equipment now, which is pretty funny, to say the least, because people were kind of down like, he'll just be there again. He might make the chase. He'll just be there, though. Well, he's in the chase now. He also won a race. So it's just pretty funny to me. I don't think Michael Annett's a great driver. I think he had potential with Richard Petty Motorsports back in 2012 and 2013, and then the 2013 Daytona crash happened. If you haven't seen, I think he goes like head on to the wall, and he has to sit out. He got injured. He has to sit out those races. I think it did make him a little scared. And he hasn't really been the same since then. I think he had, it's kind of like a Steve Park situation. He had a lot of, potential, a lot of talent. But at the end, an injury kind of laying back. But it's good to see Annett in victory lane. Just kind of cool, especially since I'm a Junior fan. So Junior Motorsports at victory lane at Daytona. 1-2 again for them. They always do well at Daytona. That's a big, point in their whole program in the Xfinity Series. They want to win at Daytona, and they show up consistently at Daytona with fast race cars. But the big thing of the weekend, and probably the best race of Speedweeks, happened in the Daytona 500 in the Cup Series. I would rate this race a lot better than the Xfinity Series and better than the Truck Series race due to the fact that the Truck Series race was kind of just like wrecking a lot. The Cup race had wrecks at the end, but all throughout wasn't a wreck fest. So for the Cup race, a lot of people were looking forward to this. Not really looking forward to it. They were kind of like, it's going to be single file. It's going to be the worst 500 ever. You had people on social media everywhere, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, all going like, this is going to suck. All this stuff. NASCAR made a sweep victory promo for the Daytona 500 in response to the Super Bowl halftime show, which didn't show that. For SpongeBob, they actually put some SpongeBob cameos in it as well. And people on there are like, when this is going to be better than when the Daytona 500, I'm going to laugh. And people on Twitter are like, it's going to be single file. This package is stupid. Why do we ever get rid of tandem racing? This is stupid. NASCAR needs to change its package, even though they are. This is stupid. NASCAR didn't know what they're doing with these cars. They just made single file around the wall. And even the drivers were thinking, it's going to be just like what we saw. We're going to go up against the wall. We're probably just going to ride around. Maybe at the stage ending we'll make some moves. But otherwise, it's just going to be single file like we saw. We don't think anything else is going to happen. The moment they dropped the green flag, action. And it never stopped. So on lap 1, Byron and Bowman tried to get up to the top side. Byron chose the inside, got up in front of his teammate. The front 3 got single file, but Ricky Stenhouse had other plans. He wanted to go lead the race. And, they stayed double file for a lot. Byron got shuffled out by Logano, and or Bowman did, and then I think Byron did also got shuffled out a little bit later. But they were 2 by 2 for a long time, and it was just outstanding racing throughout the whole race. A big part of this, though, and I think the biggest part in the Clash, we didn't see conditions like we saw in the 500. There were 20 cars in the Clash, and not only that, but it was just cool. There was no sun. It was cloudy, overcast, a cooler day. It wasn't hot and slick. No sun, it was just kind of a miserable day, and not really a day that would produce some great racing. You go and then you look at the duels, nighttime under the lights, cool there again. The track doesn't have heat in it. It's not that slick. And then you get to the Daytona 500. This was the best day of Speedweeks because it was hot. The sun was shining down. Hot, slick racetrack. If the conditions are like that, going to produce good racing. And here's why. These cars are just glued to the ground as is because of how low they're running. So basically they're just glued to the track, and if there's no, handling issues, then they're just going to be glued to the track. They're just going to ride around. If there are handling issues, your car has to handle good. It also, but you also have to focus on speed as well. So in the Clash, when it went single file, part of that was probably because, also they had practices in between the duels and the 500. They didn't have any practice from 500 qualifying to the duels. So basically, what they were racing in the duels was what they qualified with, which is most likely out of control craziness with how they set up their restrictor plate cars. So basically, after the duels, they have some practices. They probably tune their cars to make them handle better, and what that produces is some better racing, because when you're in the hot and slick conditions and your car is handling well, then you can start to make some moves. If it's handling like it was probably, after qualifying, then you're probably not going to be able to make those moves. But I think some of the biggest factors is the weather and also the fact that they had practices to tune their cars in and make them handle better. Also, before the race started, Jim France, knowing that drivers were just riding around the Xfinity race and the duels and whatnot, got up in front of everyone and said, I hope some of you guys go and put on a show like Chase and Denny have been doing and get down to the bottom lane with them. The one thing I don't like that he did there was call it a show, because we have seen the word entertainment and show thrown around a lot as of late, which, I don't really like to see, but that is what it is. They're in the entertainment business, quote unquote, because that's basically what they're doing. So there's not really much to argue with there. They basically are entertainment based. But let's just get into the race. So they started the race 2 by 2, 2 by 2, all that. And after some pit cycles cycled around, and I think a caution came out in the middle of that for Corey LaJoie blowing a tire, Kyle Busch ended up winning stage number 1. Stage 2 saw more of the same double file. In fact, stage 2 is actually, I think you could break up each stage into different parts. Stage 1 had the good racing. Stage 2 had strategy. And stage 3 had, good racing, and then with the wrecks at the end. But stage 2 had a lot of strategy, and this is something that's been big on restrictor plates for the last few years, and this is where Toyota and Chevy have been lacking. The Fords have such a good, they're just so good at communicating with each other. They work together so well, and whenever they come down pit road, all the Fords come down together. It's not like it's like split. All the Fords come down together. Chevys, when do you ever see all the Chevys come down together? Toyota only has like 5 cars. So at the end of the day, what happened was Hendrick Motorsports and Joe Gibbs Racing knew they needed to do something in order to beat those Fords. So while all the Fords came down pit road, you know who stayed out? The Hendrick Motorsports Chevrolets and the Joe Gibbs Racing Toyotas. Toyota and Chevy were each other's biggest friends here in the Daytona 500. At one point, it was Matt Benedetto, Kyle Busch, and like Eric Jones, I think, along with Byron, Johnson, Bowman, Chase, all out there. JGR affiliated cars, JGR cars, and Hendrick Motorsports cars, all stay on the racetrack. And the reason for that is because they made a plan before the race started that they will team up with each other in order to battle with the Fords and not let the Fords get out by themselves. A very, very good plan by those two. And it's a round of applause, too, because they worked with a manufacturer that wasn't their own. They knew they had to do something, they did something, and they did prevail at the end. But in stage number 2, all the Fords came down early. And then Matt DiBenedetto, leading about a 6-7 car train, catches the back of that pack. They caught the pack with 6-7 cars. The pack was racing double file. DiBenedetto got up in the middle of it. There were 3 wide moments with Larson and all that. I mean, it was crazy. I was fearing for DiBenedetto and all those other leaders. I was like, please just come down pit road. Please back out. And unfortunately, it was going to work out perfectly because they were going to pit with around 10 to go on the stage, and they were just going to take fuel only. Unfortunately, that got ruined when Casey Mears and I think Parker Kligerman caused a yellow flag. So they then had to come down pit road. Luckily, it wasn't too bad, though, because only 4 cars decided to stay on the racetrack at that point, and young Ryan Blaney ended up winning stage number 2, and it was kind of close there at the end for that stage win, but Blaney does end up winning stage number 2. I also forgot to mention that Kurt Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got into it earlier in the race. That was really the first and only incident of the race until stage 3. But Kurt Busch and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. got into it into turn number 1, collecting Bubba Wallace, along with Jamie McMurray. Dylan spun out as well. But I saw a lot of people like, oh, Stenhouse back to his wrecking ball days. But he did nothing wrong. He was just underneath Kurt Busch, and Kurt cut down. I mean, Kurt tried to clear, Stenhouse still had the nose, and Kurt just kept coming down. Stenhouse was all the way in the WL line. So, I mean, people are still mad at Stenhouse for something that happened back in July 2018. Get over it, okay? It's happened. It's done with. You don't have to, be mad at the guy all the time now. It's happened. It's done with. It's over with. It's been half a year, just give it up, okay? It's done. He hasn't done anything since July 2018 at Daytona, okay? So, I mean, god dang, people wrecked the field. Jimmy Johnson just wrecked the field in the Clash. Palmer wrecked the field here today, or yesterday, I guess. But back to the race. After stage 2, stage 3 started, it was more of the same double file, and it was really cool seeing William Byron and Jimmy Johnson running side by side. They were side by side for multiple laps straight. They were just 2 by 2 all the way back. It was pretty great racing. We saw Hendrick Motorsports just leading the train, and it was Jimmy Johnson versus Chad Knaus at the front of the field. Byron ended up, he just led all those laps. He kept on getting out front of Johnson. He finally cleared Johnson. And then I was actually listening to Byron's radio at the time. Chad Knaus comes over and says, we are pitting with those Fords. Tab Boy is the spotter. He goes, Tab, whenever you hear any, chatter on the radio, call it. We're coming down with the Fords. Now, the Fords knew something like that was going to happen. They didn't want anyone in on their plan. And that is what led to trouble in stage 3 of the race. So, the Fords, knowing this, decided they were going to come down pit road in turns 3 and 4. They gave the warning. Tab Boyd, I was listening to it, right? Byron is coming off, entering turn number 4. Tab Boyd goes, they're pitting. Oh, too late now. And the Fords come down. With them not saying anything, Byron goes, yeah, he had a hand out the window, but he wasn't waving it. So I didn't think he was coming down pit road. I saw his hand out the window, but he wasn't waving it like he was coming down pit road. And that is where the issue started. No one knew the Fords were pitting until turns 3 and 4. How are you going to have time to do that? And, for everyone to avoid that, whatever. Unfortunately, Rick Ware Racing didn't get the memo quite in time, and as one tried to slow to avoid or come down pit road, whatever, the other didn't really get the memo that they were pitting and ran into his teammate and caused a major pileup on the pit road. Tyler Wright got wiped out, then got into the left rear of Jimmy Johnson's car and tore that quarter panel completely off, right? Got some air. Stenhouse then also got collected, and also Michael McDowell was able to get through it, and then some controversy started there as well. But so really, I wouldn't place the blame on Rick Ware Racing for this, because the Fords didn't tell anyone they were coming down pit road. And how are you supposed to know, like you're going at Daytona 200 miles an hour, you're not going to be able to react in time if someone starts slowing in front of you to come down pit road. I mean, that's just, I don't know. It's kind of foolish by the Fords to do it. I understand why they did it, but it was just kind of foolish at that point to, do that. They caused a major pileup and tore up some really good race cars. So then, after all that, Michael McDowell and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. are leading the race. The issue, however, is that Michael McDowell and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. pitted while the pits were closed, and neither one of them wanted to believe it. So McDowell is up at the front. David Hoots is threatening to black flag the 34. He says, I will send him to the back. I will give him the black flag. He has to go back. McDowell is not budging. He's saying, that's bullshit. I was in. The light was never red. God damn it. They're just making this up as they go. After looking at some replays, it was very clear that the 34 and the 17 did not make pit road. They may have been committed to pit road, but they also did not make it to pit road. They easily could have just driven through pit road and not have done their service. You cannot pit when the pits are closed. It was close, but they were not there. I think Stenhouse was closer than McDowell. McDowell was nowhere near close to doing that. So those two finally dropped to the back. We got the green flag, and they started going double file again in a 2x2 and whatever. We got some few more caution flags, but then a really unfortunate break happened for Eric Jones and a lot of the field. So Jones is running, I think, second on the inside, second or third on the inside. He has an issue with his fuel pressure. It drops. He ends up slowing the whole inside lane because by the time he realized what happened, he couldn't really get low. So I think it was Bowman and Byron behind him. They got screwed back. They went from top 5 to not outside the top 15. And so for them, it really ruined their race. But also, it put everyone to the high side then because there was no inside lane. So it started going, once again, high side around the wall. And fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, Kyle Larson cut a tire down in turn 3, spun around, brought out the caution flag. On the ensuing restart, Jamie McMurray lined up second, Jamie McMurray lined up fourth. And as I think Hamlin cut down from Kyle Busch to get down from his teammate, that left McMurray leading the outside train. The problem with that is that McMurray got damage on the front end from the first caution, or the first incident of the race, so he was not going. And that damage slowed up the outside so much that there is now no longer an outside lane, and the inside started to line up around the bottom lane, and then we got another caution flag, which then, and then that yellow flag caused another restart, and we got some racing in, and then the big one happened. Paul Menard, trying to give Matt DiBenedetto a big shove into turn number 3, spins the 95 around and causes a melee you see in the picture. Eric Almirola got up off the ground. Luckily, he was okay. Reagan was underneath him. Jimmy Johnson was involved. Jones, Truex was involved. Ryan Blaney might pick to win the 500. Luckily, unfortunately, that is a prediction that got wrong there. Tift was involved. Newman, Hemrick, Reddick, Dillon, Suarez. I mean, so many. Good race cars were torn up in this. Chase Elliott got some damage, along with William Byron, Joey Logano, Ricky Stenhouse. A lot of cars got damaged in that. I think 21 cars were involved in that crash, so it was a massive, massive crash. Brought out the red flag. They luckily got cleaned up, got back to racing, and then this is where it kind of started to get a little embarrassing, was wreck after wreck after wreck. I believe they wrecked 2 or 3 more times, which was kind of ridiculous. I mean, they went the whole race, and obviously it's the end of the race, so they'll race harder, but some of those were unnecessary. I mean, you saw Stenhouse kind of split the middle, which wasn't really there, and ended up spinning him and Larson and some others, and then Clint Boyer cut across Michael McDowell's nose, even though he wasn't clear, and wrecked as well. So, I mean, gosh, I don't know what those last few wrecks were for, but they were pretty unnecessary. We had another red flag come out, and it was just chaos. I mean, we had 2 red flags in the span of like 6 laps, and it was just chaos at the end. If I had to rate the race, I mean, the first 109 we got like an 8 or a 9, but I think that last 10 brought it down to a definite 8 out of 10. I mean, gosh, jeez. I mean, that wreck those wrecks at the end was just ridiculous. I was like, gosh, can you guys stop wrecking? We just want to finish this race with cars that can actually run, and it actually produced for some funny moments, because Jimmy Johnson, his fuel cell was dangling off the side of the car. He ends up with a ninth place finish. He didn't even have like a rear quarter panel, and he ends up inside the top 10. Ross Chastain scored a 10th place finish. Alex Bowman got like 11th. Ryan Freese, I think, got a top 10. Michael McDowell's up there. But in the final restart, Hamlin drops down from his teammate Kyle Busch, and now they're leading 1-2. Logano gets a good run, gets by Kyle Busch, and now it is his and Hamlin's as they're running 1-2. He has Ryan Preece behind him in third. Preece tries to go up with Logano. Kyle Busch gets to the outside with a good run. Logano's trying to drag the brake. Kyle Busch gets a run. Logano blocks to the inside. Then Kyle goes back to the outside. They're side by side to turn 3, all behind Denny Hamlin. Busch with a run. Hamlin goes up and blocks it. Into turn 3 and 4, Denny Hamlin comes out the final corner and wins the 2019 Daytona 500, his second triumph in the big race, and he does it for J.D. Gibbs in the number 11 car. Very, very sweet there. Joe Gibbs Racing 1-2-3 in the season after they lost, J.D. Gibbs. Very emotional win for that whole organization. Congrats to them. A great 1-2-3 finish. The first time an organization has done it since Hendrick Motorsports back in the 90s. So, they definitely played with Ford here tonight. They did what they needed to do with Hendrick Motorsports, and it worked out for Toyota. They ended up in victory lane and a 1-2-3 for J.D. Gibbs and Joe Gibbs Racing. Now, on to the race statistics. There were, surprisingly, only 15 lead changes during the race. Even though there's a lot of side-by-side racing, there wasn't that many passing up at the front, which was fine, though, because they were racing pretty aggressively. And, it was just a good race overall. So it actually surprised me there was only 15 lead changes, some of the least in Daytona 500 history. Even 2013 had over like 25 or something. So it was honestly shocking to see this didn't really have that many lead changes, but it was still good racing throughout. So that didn't really affect how the race went. We had one debris caution. There was actual debris on the racetrack. That was a pretty big chunk of a debris that someone would have hit, clobbered, and probably destroyed their race car, blown a tire, sent it into the crowd or something. So a good call by NASCAR there, seeing that debris and throwing it. And that was David Hoot's final race in terms of doing the race control. So no more put it out from him, which is sad because he seems to know stuff about NASCAR, and it's just sad to see him go. But good 500 for NASCAR. Great way to start off the 2019 season, and the ratings went up. I think about 8%. I think it went from a 5.1 to a 5.5. So that's a good jump. And will NASCAR ride this swing of momentum heading into Atlanta? Because they had Barstool Sports covering the Daytona 500. They sent one of their guys down there. And honestly, it just worked out perfectly. There were a ton of people that I saw that said, hey, I'm only watching this because of Barstool, and I like it. And will they join for Atlanta, where there's the new Aero package, and there's uncertainty about that Aero package, because this is a package that hasn't actually been used. This is the one without the Aero ducts, because I don't know why. I think it's like Atlanta, Homestead, Pocono, and Darlington. I think are using it without the Aero ducts. All the other ones are using it with the Aero ducts. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. That'll be our first real test to see how the package goes, but I won't really give any criticism or praise of it until like Texas. I think that's a fair, type of time. Like we gave HMS up until Texas last season when they weren't really doing that well. We knew it was going to be a bad season. So I think I'll give this package up to Texas to see how it goes. But great start to the 2019 season. Congrats once again to JGR and Denny Hamlin on a well-deserved victory. That was it. Most bipolar Speedweeks in history. We went single file, wreckfest, single file, and now good racing turned into a wreckfest. I mean, gosh dang. Great 500, one of the best ones in our recent history. I mean, recent memory. Gotta say that, the last two were pretty bad because they just kept wrecking. 2016 was actually bad because the thing people remember about 2016 was they went double file to the finish line, but they were actually single file for most of the race. 2015 actually wasn't that memorable until the last 20 laps either. 2014 was probably the last best Daytona 500 to be run. So, great 500 here in 2019. We saw great racing. We saw crashes. We saw everything. If you're a NASCAR fan, you got everything out of this race that you could have won. If you like strategy, you got the strategy in Stage 2. If you like clean racing with underdogs up front, you got that. If you like the big crashes, you got that in Stage 3 as well. So basically everything for a NASCAR fan. clumped up into this 500 miles of Daytona. In fact, more than that because we had some overtimes. But I thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys for the next video.